is Megan Wood, and I'll be talking about tracking in secondary public schools. So from my personal experiences, I am a current senior at UT in the UTeach program, and I've had the opportunity to teach elementary through high school level students of varying levels. And also 4 years ago, I was a student as teacher at my high school for a class called Math Modeling. This class was for students that didn't do very well in Algebra 1 and needed some extra instruction. A lot of times these students were labeled by their peers as being not good at math and just not very smart, and so this led to them being not very motivated and having a lot of low self-esteem, even though I knew these students were very capable of doing well. So what is tracking? Basically, tracking is grouping students into different classes and assigning them. This can be into low, medium, or high level tracking, and it's based off of the type of intelligence they have, and they can be classified by their potential for learning, what they already know, as well as what teachers and counselors believe is the best for their future. So I think tracking should be eliminated in schools for 3 reasons. The first is that students benefit more from a heterogeneous group of students than students that are more like them. The second reason is that students with less opportunity are more likely to be placed in lower tracks, and this affects their future and their ability to continue on to higher education. And the third is that the process of assigning tracks is biased and extremely unfair, and the type of instruction that these students are getting in low versus high track is very different. So the first reason, like I said, students benefit more from a heterogeneous group of students. There was a case study that was 4 years long, according to Boiler's article, Open Our Ideas, and this was at Railside High School, and they believed that D-tracked classes were better because it promoted a heterogeneous group of students and a multi-dimensional approach to learning, as well as using complex instruction. And they proved that there's more equity among these students in these different classrooms, and students became more highly encouraged, they respected others more, they gained more self-responsibility as well, compared to 2 other high schools in the area that did not do this type of heterogeneous learning. Also, according to Oaks Chapter 1, tracking, students often who are grouped in similar groups to each other, they lack self-esteem and they become unhappy. Like I said earlier, from my student as teacher experience, students start to feel that they're inferior or dumb compared to the other students on these higher tracks. So the second reason I believe that tracking should be eliminated in schools is that students with less opportunity and different cultural backgrounds are more likely to be placed in these lower tracks, and this isn't good for their future or their getting higher education. From Noguera and Wing's article, Structuring Inequality at Berkeley High, there's another case study done with an African American student named Chantel, and her social, cultural, and economic background led her to being misled and lacking adequate information from school officials, and also she lacked that encouragement from parents and peers to take higher level classes. She ended up taking pre-algebra freshman year instead of algebra, which set her behind in classes and allowed her not to get the prereqs she needed to get into colleges. So from this figure, you can see that the proportion of students, there's a high correlation between race and AP classes that are taken by students. So the proportion of white to Asian and African Americans to Latino is equal, but then when you're looking at the AP classes, the proportion is rather shocking. So about 15 to 90% more Asians and whites are in AP classes than African Americans and Latinos. From this figure, you can see that in the class of 2000, students graduating compared to ones that are eligible for colleges such as CSU or UC, the African American Latino students have very high difference between those two compared to whites or even Asian students. And the third reason I believe that tracking should be eliminated is that just the process of assigning tracks from teachers and counselors is very biased, and it's not fair, and also the type of knowledge they gain and the type of instruction from low versus high track is unequal. So According to Oaks Chapter 4, the distribution of knowledge, it talks about how teachers and counselors are assigning these different tracks. They do it a lot. Sometimes they correlate misbehavior and nonconformity with slower tracks and students that aren't doing as well. And so they believe that, or often, this is true of poor and minority students from different cultural backgrounds. And instead of placing students based off their grades and their merits and standardized tests, this is the biased way they end up doing it. Also, teachers, the instruction in low versus high track is very different, and the expectations that students have, or teachers have for students in low versus high track is very different. So, for example, in an English classroom, a low track English classroom, they would learn basic thematic ideas, young adult fiction, reading comprehension, reading skills, compared to a high track, which will be more SAT vocabulary and college prep, as well as writing essays and research and reading famous literary works and studying literary genres. So not only is the content they're learning different, but also like how engaging the material is very different in low versus high track classes. So I believe that tracking should be eliminated in schools completely. The three reasons: homogeneous groups of students lead to low self-esteem and lacking motivation, as well as students that come from less opportunity because their social, economic, or cultural background often get placed in these lower tracks, and it's hard for them to move up. And also, process of assigning these tracks and the quality of the instruction in these tracks is unequal and very biased. So I think there are many alternatives to tracking that teachers can implement, and one is that they can create lesson plans that are more flexible to students' individual needs, and this could include placing students in groups that are with different material or different instruction, as well as allowing students just to learn in multiple ways by reading, writing, listening, or speaking, and as well as placing them in individual and group work so they can get a very varying experience, and written and verbal assessments to test them in multiple ways. And also, frequently changing students, like who they're working with, can help promote this heterogeneous mixture and allowing students for learning various knowledge and experiences.